once the recording has started. Okay, great. So very good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining in today's webinar, jointly hosted by GIZ Egypt and AIFA. GIZ is the German Agency for International Development Cooperation, and I am Saurajit Iyer from the GIZ Egypt team. Now, solar energy has been seen helping to scale up long-term energy access, transition, and affordability across a range of geographies. And in today's webinar, what we plan to do is we aim to foster outside-in learnings and insights from Asian markets that very, very closely resemble Egypt's socioeconomic and demography profile. We are joined today by a fantastic team of speakers, and I want to thank all of them for giving us the time today. Andreas from GIZ Egypt, Vibhuti and Shantanu from IFA, Anna from Climate Bonds, Ahmed from IRENA, Adam from IEA, Shiali from Shenzhen Power Solutions, Sirish from Kiva PVEL, Irtaza from Shams Power, and Tharinya from the ASEAN Energy Center. One quick instruction to all the attendees listening in, please do feel free to type in any questions that you may have in the chat box, and we will try our best to answer them in the chat itself if possible during the course of the webinar itself. With this, let me now hand it over to Andreas, Head of Private Sector Development at GIZ Egypt. Over to you, Andreas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rashid, for this very nice introduction. Good morning to all of you. First of all, thank you, Rashid, for organizing it. Without your initiative and without your internal coordination, this would not be happening today. And we are here today to explore one of Egypt's most promising sectors, renewable energy, in particular solar power. You have to imagine Egypt has made remarkable progress. What was once only a very small contribution now makes up 11.5% of the country's electricity mix, with solar energy accounting for half of the share. Landmark projects like Benban, the world's fourth largest solar park, have not only powered the grid, but also created jobs and opportunities for more than 4,000 people in this country. And we think this is just the beginning. Egypt's integrated sustainable energy strategy 2035 targets a very bold shift. The goal is 42% of electricity from renewables by 2035. This is triple of today's share. And we all know the future energy demand, it will only go up. It only has one direction. To meet these needs, Egypt will need to scale up not only large-scale solar parks, but also rooftop and also decentralized solutions. This makes renewable energy not only accessible, but also affordable to all of us. And this is not only essential for energy security, but also for Egypt's broader climate ambition, including its commitments to the Paris Agreement. So today's webinar is about learning. It's about learning from others, especially from the Asian countries. Because these countries, they share some similarities with Egypt and they have achieved exponential growth in solar. Of the top 14 non-OECD countries in on-grid solar, 8 are from Asia, and many countries are growing with a CAGR of over 30%. Over the last 5 years. Egypt currently is growing already an impressive 9%. So ladies and gentlemen, what policies, what technologies, and what financing mechanisms enable this growth? And what lesson can we apply in Egypt's unique context? These are the questions our distinguished speakers will explore today. GIZ, through its work in renewable energy around the world, is committed to supporting Egypt's national efforts, and we are excited to contribute today in this important dialogue. Before I hand over to Anna, I know and I'm fully aware that for many of our participants, today is a special day. It's a day before the Eid break, and I have to admit I'm also very much looking forward to spend a couple of days with my family on the beach. But wherever you go, either to the Red Sea or to the North Coast, on the way to the beach, you will see lots of wind parks and solar parks. This is really impressive, and I find it always when I travel there astonishing how much wind parks we already have. But I want also to make you think about the fast land that is still available on the way to the beaches to build additional wind and solar parks in this country. With that, let me hand over to Ana Diaz from the Climate Bonds Initiative. You will guide us through the next session, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Sorajit. This is an honor to be here. Thank you so much. I don't know, Sorajit, you will be presenting the slides?
My colleague Shantanu and the IFA colleagues will do that.
Yeah. Okay, great. So while this is happening, so it's a very interesting topic. So scaling up Egypt solar sector is part of the energy transition. Solar is a huge part of the energy transition, but especially in Egypt. And already Andreas mentioned that. But I want to give a brief introduction. What is the debate today around the future of energy? Because there's a lot of things going on. And there is a idea that the system we feel like is increasing chaotic. How is the debate about energy transition? So if you ask a panel of experts about energy transition today, you like to hear a familiar refrain of pessimism because net zero targets are far from being achieved, which is true, but emissions are still rising, which is also true. Electric vehicles are slowly down and the fossil fuel industry appears encouraged. We're told, not yet, but it's okay. We're told again and again that the world is falling to decarbonize. There are a lot of geopolitical distraction from climate priorities, and it's easy to believe that the whole project is unraveled. But this prevailing pessimism miss the larger picture, and this is what we're talking today here. Beneath the noise, something remarkable is happening. New low-carbon energy technologies are now not only growing, but they're accelerating and reshaping market at a scale, especially in Asia. Today's global investment in clean energy technologies is more than double that in fossil fuels. We are seeing annually that green bonds are massively expanding, and I will go deep on that later. In 2024 alone, the increase in solar power generation was equivalent to Germany's entire annual electricity consumption. In China, nearly half of all new cars sold are electric. Clean technologies are evolving so quickly that China, the world's largest energy consumer, may have already passed its peak fossil fuel demand this year. Last week, we heard, like for the first time on record, China's CO2 emissions have fallen as a result of clean energy expansion rather than weak growth of electricity demand, according to the new analysis of the Carbon Brief. Please, can we go back to the presentation? And when China peaks, the global system shifts. We can go to the second slide. So that was a brief introduction about energy transition. Please, next slide. So why solar? Where Egypt? You can see here, this is the main radiation types. I will go a bit deep on that. Egypt ranks among the top countries global in solar potential. Egypt has one of the highest overall global PV output potential, and so for the concentrated solar power. I will go deep in those technologies later. According to the World Bank, this is the ranking according to the World Bank, with an national-wide average photovoltaic electricity potential expected output from PV system, measuring 5.25 kilowatt hour per kilowatt peak. This is the photovoltaic electricity potential, represent the amount of power generated per unit of the installed PV. When we talk about solar energy, what really matters is how sunshine reaches the surface on the earth. And this is what you see in your screen right now. There are three main ways it gets here. There is direct solar radiation, also known as beam radiation. This is the sunlight that travels in a straight line from the sun without being scattered. Then we have diffuse radiation. This is the sunlight that gets scattered by cloud, dust, etc. Direct radiation works very well with concentrated solar power, and diffuse radiation works for photovoltaic. There is a third one, which is the reflected radiation, or called also albedo. And when we combine the three of them, we get something called global horizontal irradiance. That's in the middle of your slides, which is really this is the total solar energy available on a flat surface, and it's the most common metric used to estimate the solar potential of a region. Okay, the combination of these three radiation, direct, diffuse, and reflected, place Egypt ahead of the region, the region and also in Asia in terms of solar power potential, but also in terms of the world, with this photovoltaic electricity potential measurement coming in close to 40% higher than the one of China, the current top solar leader. The year-round sunshine only roughly for 10 hours, which is also important, how much time you have the sun, and that they combine with abundant usable lands areas, especially in the Western Desert and Upper Egypt, put Egypt at the top of the list for a massive scale-up of solar power. Next slide, please. So, but what is today? Egypt power sector emissions have grown 3.5 times over the past 2 decades, driven by a significant rise in gas generation to keep pace with a tripling in electricity demand. As you can see in the top of the slide, today is around 11% of Egypt electricity was generated from low carbon sources, well below the global average, which is around 40%, and Egypt's largest sources of clean electricity is hydro, around 6%, and its share of wind and solar is around 4.8%. It's less than the third of the global average, which is around 50%. So the potential is huge. Egypt aimed to generate 42, and this is already, Andrea said that, 42% of its electricity from renewable sources by 2035. This goal is very ambitious, but the IEA for the net zero scenario said 60%, so there is still room for improvement. So just to explain the lower part, because it's very important, Egypt today capacity is in solar is 2 gigawatt, around the 3% of the total capacity, and the fossil fuel altogether, natural gas and oil, is around 88.5%. So the mix, the electricity mix, is very based on solar, on fossil fuel. So, but what can change? So according to the various studies, World Bank, IRENA, Egypt, and RIA, around 19,000 to 100,000 square kilometers of land is suitable for solar energy. With this high radiation that I explained before, particularly in the deserts, that's what you have. An estimated theoretic solar capacity of Egypt is around 4,000 to 6,000 gigawatt. So it's 100 times bigger than the total capacity installed today in Egypt. So that is the potential. What can you do with that? You can produce electricity, you can produce heat, you can produce hydrogen, clean hydrogen, and sell it and export it. So this is the huge potential of the country. You're 100 times what you need in terms of capacity. Next slide, please. But of course, solar can technically cover all capacity, and we have seen, but there are real challenges. So there is intermittency of the night demand. So wherever there's no solar, then what to do? So Egypt will need a massive energy storage of backup generation. The same for the night. You can have CSP. I will show you now concentrated solar power, because that can provide the storage to the system. So there's also infrastructural need for this major grid transition upgrades will be needed to handle higher share of solar, especially for transmission from desert to the cities. Also, cost investment could be challenged, so high initial investment cost of these technologies, so the high cost of capital, regulatory uncertainties, and technical limitations hinder private investment in solar storage in the region, but also, of course, in Egypt. And this is going to be needed and massive. The economic reliance of fossil fuel will add some complexity on that. And of course, energy mix more with relying on other technologies will also provide resilience and flexibility to the grid. Please, next slide, please. So here is a scheme of concentrated solar power. So you can see, I cannot point it, but you see the hot tank and cool tank, the red and blue. Those two are storage. So this one that you see on the screen, I was responsible in the company that built that technology, and we built one in Chile with 17-hour storage. So this is possible. As you can see, there's also a turbine. I'm coming from Spain, and you heard about we have a huge blackout a month ago. So you need also turbine. You need the synchronous, the inertia that the turbine can provide to the grid. So you can have a combination of concentrated solar power. That's how it's called, this technology, with steam turbine, a huge possibility of cheap storage, because it's thermal storage, it's not electric storage. Next, please. This combined with the well-known photovoltaic, with you have a faster response to the grid, you don't have inertia, but you can have batteries in order to decouple the generation from the demand. So the combination of the concentrated solar power and the PV, that can make a very resilient, and in a high radiation country at Egypt, that will be like the win combination. I'm going very fast because I don't have much time, but I can stop and explain more in the question. Please, next. So how to finance all these? You can see here, I come from climate bonds. I work in climate bonds. We are studying how to mobilize capital to the green market. So you can see how the green social and sustainability market has been only growing for the last year. There is accumulate more than 3.5 trillion. You can see that in the slide. What are the green bonds? Green and sustainability bonds are financial instruments used to raise money specifically for projects that have environmental and social benefit. For example, they can fund renewable energy, clean transport, projects that improve access to water or efficiency. What makes them different is that the money raised must be used to clear, define green and sustainable purpose, and users are usually expected to report on how the funds are used and what impact they have. So in short, green bonds help connect the capital market with climate and development goals. But Egypt, as the region, is facing some financial challenge because an access to global capital market, there's not only in Egypt, but also in the whole emerging market. Currently, the majority of the investment from green market goes to the sector toward China and other advanced economy where the risks are perceived to be lower. Other challenges are high costs and deeper understanding of the financial mechanisms, gap in data disclosure, and compliance with environmental, social, and governance ESG. That is what is called ESG reporting standard. So there's also some capability in Egypt to do sukuk bonds. This is also a growing market. And we can go to the next, please. Then we can also have sovereign green bonds. So there's also a growing market, and you can see here the total. You can see that in the slide, in the table, and how they have been growing, mostly green, but also SLB, and I will go deep on the different type of those. So the sovereign bonds, which are simply green or sustainability bonds issued by national government. These are powerful tools. They send a strong policy signal, help mobilize private investment, and often support a country climate and development strategies. In 2020, Egypt became the first country in the MENA region to issue a green sovereign bond. The issue was valued in 750 million with 5 years maturity, and it was significant oversubscribed, meaning that the appetite for this type of bond is huge. The market is hungry and want to have this type of bonds that attract a strong investment interest. In 2022, also Egypt published a sovereign sustainability financial framework, so expanding its toolkit to include green, social, and sustainability bonds and sukuk. This framework allowed the government to diversify funding while aligning with its national climate strategies. More issues are expected. The Minister of Finance has announced plans for additional green bond and sukuk for 5-10 billion during 24 and 25. So that will be the future. Next. Next, please. So this is just a brief introduction of what are the different financial mechanisms to accelerate the energy transition. So we have green bonds. I will share this slide, so I don't want to go through that because we don't have much time. So there are green bonds, so rapid and growing instrument, project finance, blended finance. This is when you combine public and the private sector. They take more time, but they are all well-proven financial tools that can be used and put in place in order to scale up the solar technology in Egypt. Next, please. This is the last slide. So what are the opportunities? Talking about scaling up solar, the main opportunities will be cross-border energy trade, you can cross-border energy, but not only electricity, also heat and also hydrogen, which is very important, which is very demanding right now. Governments, central bank, and financial institutions to strengthen the energy financial nexus by collaborating, enhancing the integration of climate risk into financial system. This includes advocating for global disclosure standard, improving climate risk analysis, and establishing clear labels for sustainable investment funds. These measures can attract private investment while ensuring accountability and transparency. There's also developing domestic clean energy market for emerging economies in the region face underdevelopment financial market. So this needs to grow. It's growing. We see how there is a lot of appetite and from the investor part, but it still needs to grow. Cross-sector and integration offer opportunity to enhance innovation, create jobs, and reduce emission. For instance, coupling renewable energy with agriculture, agri-photovoltaic, transportation, electric buses, electric vehicles, and industry promote efficiency, supporting broader economic growth. Such integration also fosters social inclusion by improving energy access in underserved areas. And last but not least, the creation of a local market, foster resilience and ownership of the transition required skilling local workforce, supporting domestic manufacturers. So next, this is, I hope I was in time. I have only 8 minutes. Sorry, I know I was too fast, but happy to answer any question if there is. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That was very interesting. May I request attendees to type in any questions in the chat box? We move to the next keynote to International Renewable Energy Agency. Tariq Ahmed, he's the Regional Program Officer heading the Middle East and North Africa MENA region. Over to you, Tariq.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, esteemed colleagues, partners, and friends. It's my great pleasure to join you today for this timely and important webinar on scaling up Egypt's solar sector. I'd like to begin with thanking GIZ for organizing this and inviting us to be a part of this important dialogue, which brings together valuable perspectives from Egypt and across Asia to share practical lessons and opportunities. So in my speech, I wanted to zoom out a little bit and speak about the global trends in renewable energy. So at IRENA, we are witnessing an undeniable acceleration in the global shift towards renewable energy. So according to our latest renewable energy statistics report, which is published this March 2025, the report shows that 2024 alone saw a record-breaking 585 gigawatts of new installed renewable energy capacity added globally, which represent a gross year-on-year growth of 15.1% increase over the previous year. Solar, as usual, accounted for the largest share of this growth, with global solar capacity expanding by more than 32%, highlighting its central role in the global energy transition. And also, if you look at the regions, Asia continues to lead in absolute terms, with China alone contributing to 64% of the global new capacity added, largely through utility-scale solar power. However, while these figures are impressive, we must recognize that we are still falling short of global ambition. IRENA estimates that unless countries significantly raise their ambition and actions, we will fall short by 34% of the target to triple renewable by 2030, which leaves us short of 3.8 terawatt cap in global capacity if we continue with the same base. So also, let me just highlight the role of IRENA in supporting countries. So IRENA work becomes really crucial with what I mentioned earlier. We support member countries across 3 main pillars: policy, technology, and finance. On the policy front, we help governments create enabling environment that de-risk investments, clarify grid access rules, and align renewables with broader economic and climate goals. Some of the examples of the work that we do, the renewable readiness assessments and energy transition outlook, which are widely used to guide the national planning. On the technology side, we provide tools and expert guidance on system integration, grid flexibility, and innovation trends. For countries like Egypt, where solar resources are abundant, grid integration and storage are key next steps to maximize system efficiency. On the financing side, IRENA Energy Transition Accelerator Financing Platform, ETAF, is unlocking investments for transformative projects in developing countries with over $4 billion pledged in capital today. So ETAF is supporting project preparation, de-risking, and matchmaking with financiers. For example, in Africa, our partner to the platform, Africa 50, has mobilized up to $100 million to scale renewable infrastructure, including solar and hybrid systems, in support to national development priorities. The partners to ETAF to date are 13 partners, including diverse type of partners to provide blended finance. And the main idea and benefit from this platform is that it brings private sector and governmental agencies and international financial institutions together to provide what the project really needs. To also just speak a bit about Egypt, we from the previous presentation, I think we've seen very good progress that already Egypt is a renewable energy leader in the region, having set the foundation with flagship projects such as Bimban Solar Park, as one of the largest in the world. And also we saw clear policy mechanisms and rising private sector engagement with a target of sourcing 42% of electricity from renewables by 2035. I think the momentum is strong, but scaling requires expanding distributed solar, modernizing the grid, and improving access to concessional finance. And I think this specific webinar is quite important because there is a couple of exchange could happen between Egypt and Asia, and why Asia experience matters. Because today exchange with Asian counterparts is really so valuable. Countries like India and Vietnam have used transparent auction schemes to drive down costs. Others like Japan and Korea have invested heavily in digitalization, storage, and research and development, as well as China have demonstrated effective strategies in technology deployment and financing. The lessons can help Egypt to adopt a successful element, from innovative financing models to technology partnerships. Of course, every country will need to make sure that whatever experience that it uses from other success, it is very relevant and also respond to the local needs and local context of the country. So to conclude, colleagues, scaling solar energy is not just a climate imperative. It is an economic opportunity. It can boost energy security, create jobs, and attract investments. But it requires sustained commitment, collaboration, and the right enabling conditions. And for that, IRENA remains committed to walking this path with Egypt and all our member countries. We look forward to working with you all to turn insights into action and support a just, inclusive, and ambitious energy transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tariq. And yeah, GIZ, IFA type of organizations all look forward to build that bridge between Egyptian stakeholders and industry, international industry organizations like yourselves. From IRENA, let's go to IEA. Adam. Adam is the energy investment analyst within the EIU at International Energy Agency. Adam, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Delighted to be here to give you a short presentation to introduce the IEA's World Energy Investment Report. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we saw in 2024 that global energy investment rose above $3 trillion for the first time. And what we can see here in this slide is that clean energy investment was really the driving force behind this and tipped over $2 trillion for the first time in 2024. Can we click, please? Now, within clean energy investment, what we see is that renewables and grids since 2023 have actually had more investment than all fossil fuels together. So within the driving force of clean energy, it is really renewables and grids that we are seeing that are pushing up that investment level. Please click. We're here today in this webinar to talk about solar, obviously, and Egypt and lessons from Asia. So to dig into generation a little bit more, we can see that solar really is the shining light in terms of investment in generation. And it reached just over $500 billion in 2024, more than all other generation technologies combined. And if you can click, please. So what we can see here is that, yes, wind is increasing. Yes, nuclear is increasing, which is good to see. But of course, nothing compared to the scale that we have seen from solar. Next slide, please. I wanted to dig in now into a little bit about the geographical imbalance that we've seen. And Anna already mentioned this. So to put some numbers to what Anna talked about, here we can see overall clean energy investment, which is, as I mentioned, $2 trillion in 2024. If you can click, please. If we look now at the split between advanced economies and emerging and developing economies, we can see that it's roughly split 50-50. But if you click, please. However, if we separate out China, what we can see is that for all other emerging and developing economies, they're only responsible for 15% of clean energy investment. This is despite having 2/3 of the world's population. So I'm sure we can all agree on this webinar that we really want to see that situation change, and we want to see the amount of investment flowing, not only for solar, but for all clean energy increasing for emerging market and developing economies. Please, can we go to the next slide? Here, I wanted to provide a bit more information in terms of the investment that we've seen in Africa, splitting out North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa with some of the selected markets in Asia. So what we can see, taking the Asian markets first, and I'll talk about China at the end, what we've seen across these time periods, that since 2010, for example, India's investment has massively scaled up. So India has gone from around 10 billion invested between 2010 and 2014 to over 73 billion invested between 2020 and 2024. Similar story for Southeast Asia. It's gone from a bit slower to begin, but it's gone from 7 billion up to 30 billion. And even Sub-Saharan Africa has gone from 8 billion up to 35 billion. But unfortunately, what we've seen in North Africa is, though there was a scale up to begin with, the amount invested between 2015 and 2019 at around 7 billion has remained the same as the amount that we've seen in that second time period. So obviously, more work to be done, more investment that we would like to see within this region. Now, to talk about China, you can see they're at a completely different scale. My graph there has a completely different scale, 10 times. We all know that this is, originally backed by very strong government policies, backed by cost reductions in manufacturing and a massive amount of government support that has seen solar investment at a scale that we are not witnessing in other markets across the world. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I talked about where we've been at a global level, talked about where we've been at those key regions that we at the IEA track in terms of investment and some of those country markets. Now let's talk about the future. So where we want to see, or where countries have promised that they will go. So this slide looks at the announced pledges. So in IEA speak, this is APS, the announced pledges scenarios. This is where a country has made a net zero commitment, where they have put in place a renewable energy target. They put in place an investment target for particular energy technologies. So we've examined all of these across the world. And what we can see is that China's will need to increase 1.3 times to meet their targets that they've agreed. Emerging market and developing economies, excluding China, excluding Africa, 3 times increase. But the scale of the challenge in Africa is even greater, 3.5 times. So as I mentioned, we need to see a huge scale up of investment. Please, can we go to the next slide? So I wanted to close with an example, and I know that other colleagues on this webinar have already discussed great examples of how Egypt could scale up investment, scale up the amount of funding going to solar, and I know other colleagues will after I've spoken. And great to see that Anna already provided a fantastic introduction to green bonds and a fantastic overview, so I can get into the details. This was a project that I was based in Vietnam, and I launched this project, which the Global Green Growth Institute, working with the Ministry of Finance in Vietnam, supported by the government of Luxembourg, set about to establish green bonds, local green bonds in Vietnam. Now, why are local bonds more important? This allows countries to insulate themselves from exchange rate risks. It stimulates local capital markets. We see increased financing flow, and it's more affordable financing, which reduces the cost of capital for clean energy projects. So this project developed the use of proceeds, the green bond framework, which Anna has already discussed, which are crucial for green bonds, with EVN Finance, which would Electricity Vietnam Finance, which is the electricity provider in Vietnam, produce those documents to secure investment for commercial and industrial rooftop solar. And GGI, together with EVN Finance, secured investors from those that you can see on the screen for $75 million US. And it was made possible through a guarantee that was provided by Garanco of 50 million equivalent USD. As I mentioned, this was in Vietnamese dong. Here we can see DFI financing used to be catalytic to accelerate the market. And indeed, a number of green bonds that were launched in Vietnam afterwards did not require the guarantee. So that is something that we can see how DFI financing is really used to be catalytic. Next slide, please. So just to say thank you very much. Also to flag that tomorrow we will be launching our 2025 World Energy Investment Report tomorrow morning, Paris time. So if you would like to know more and see the latest facts and figures, please tune in tomorrow morning. But thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Adam. All the best with your launch tomorrow. Just for the benefit of the attendees, just to let you know, Adam mentioned Vietnam in his closing slide. Vietnam and Egypt are very similar in terms of GDP and population, so very likely peer market to look at. With this, let me move on to Ms. Vibhuti Garg. She's Director South Asia at IFA to speak on the solar policies thematic. Thank you. Vibhuti, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sir Rajit. And if I can request the team to put up the slides. A very good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, which is co-hosted by GIZ Egypt, an Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, most of you know as IFA. Next slide. Very quickly about the company. IFA is a global energy finance think tank. We are headquartered in US, but have presence across different geographies, in Asia, Australia, Europe, and North America. Sorry, can you just stay on to the, thank you. The overall purpose of the organization is to strategically conduct and disseminate financial analysis to accelerate transition to a diverse, sustainable, and profitable energy economy. Next slide. As an economist, I will like to talk through numbers first. So before we jump into the discussion, on policies, want to show the current state of renewable energy and in particular solar deployment in Asia, Middle East as well, and Egypt, because Egypt also kind of mirrors, in terms of resource endowments and energy landscape more to Middle East. So very quickly want to kind of set the context. Next slide. This chart shows how in Asian countries, renewable energy has actually led the capacity growth, which shows an increase of 84%, like almost doubling in a span of just 5 years. Even in Middle East, we can see there is a 67% growth. But the scale in Egypt has seen very muted RE growth so far. Next slide. If we look at solar in particular, this chart shows that within RE, solar grew almost 3 times in 5 years in Asia and Middle East. And we will see why solar as a renewable energy source has been exploited more in the coming slides. Next slide. Now, if we look at the generation, contribution of renewable energy, though has increased from 24% in 2020 to 29% in 2024 in Asia. In Middle East, it is 5%. And in Egypt, it is, I mentioned that it has muted growth, but in terms of in generation, it is still 11%. Next slide. Within renewable energy, if you just break that up, solar generation has gone up in Asia from 14% in 2020 to 25% in 2024. In Middle East, while RE generation is only 5% of total generation, but more than half of it is from solar. In Egypt, it is just like 22%. So the majority of RE is coming from solar. So there is a lot more the country can do and use its solar potential to meet its energy needs. Next slide. Countries in Asia have set up big targets for renewable energy and particular solar, and most of this target is led by China and India alone. So while Egypt has set a solar target of around 7 gigawatt by 2030, as my previous presenters were showing, there is huge potential. So there is huge I would say gap in even in terms of target setting by Egypt, because there's a lot of potential which can be exploited in Egypt. Next slide. Now, if you compare, coming to why solar makes sense, if you compare the levelized cost of electricity, reason why we are witnessing solar boom is primarily because solar has the least levelized cost of electricity, making it the resource which is not only sustainable, but most economical as well. Next slide. The other advantage of solar is its ability to meet peak demand. This chart shows for Turkey that 70% of the Turkey peak demand increase has been met through solar since 2019. So that's I would say, the use which solar can really help in meeting peak demand during daytime. Next slide. I will take this another example specifically in case of India. Now, let's talk a little bit more about details in India, which has also seen solar boom in the last few years. Next slide. In terms of capacity and generation, renewable energy contributes 46% of the total capacity, with solar having 22% of the overall share, and 22% of the generation is coming from renewable energy. And again, solar has 8% share. So that's quite huge if you compare with all the other RE sources. Next slide. Coming to meeting the peak demand. So for India, it shows, if you look at the duck curve, it is solar which is actually meeting the load during daytime and is able to meet daytime peak demand effectively. And this black line, which is the price at the power exchange, we see prices during those hours are the least. So in fact, last month in India, we had zero negative prices for the very first time. So that is how the solar is helping to lower the overall generation cost, and the benefits then are passed on to the consumers as well, who are able to then meet the energy demand in a most cost effective way. Next slide. Now, coming to the policies certainly have played a very instrumental role in solar growth story. This slide kind of presents the development in the chronological order and also the growth in solar capacity. So I would say it would be fair to see that the growth in the next year is kind of tied up with the policies that have been announced in the previous year, but also in the following years, because the impact is visible not only in the next year, but also a sustained growth that we have witnessed in India. So while the Electricity Act, the National Electricity Policy laid the foundation, I would say, of broader electricity sector reforms. And in 2008, India announced its National Action Plan on Climate Change, specifically laying out the goal towards more cleaner deployment. It was in 2010, which was the launch of the Jawaharlal Nehru Solar Mission that laid foundation target of 20 gigawatt by 2022. This target seemed monumental at that point of time, but in the next years, we were able to increase that target multifold. And this scheme really helped in focusing on utility scale projects as well as building more and more R&D in the country. So while this was on the supply side, now in order to create more demand, government in 2011 came up with solar RPO, renewable purchase obligation, specifically so that discoms have specific solar targets to meet. However, despite all these developments, we were witnessing still very high solar prices, and this was acting as a bottleneck. So there were a lot more incentives like feed-in tariff, generation-based incentives that were introduced during these periods. But prices were still, as I said, high. And government introduced viability gap funding in 2013, which offered a capital subsidy for competitively bid utility scale projects. To improve scalability, in 2014, Solar Park scheme was introduced. This enabled plug-and-play utility scale, solar zones, which help in rapid scaling of solar projects. I mentioned about 20 gigawatt target by 2022, which was set up in 2010. In 2015, India revised its NDCs, which gave major boost to solar with 100 gigawatt of capacity by 2022. So that is the increase in the scale of target setting that really helped in boosting more and more, I would say, solar growth in India. But the biggest game changer was in 2016 when India introduced competitive reverse bidding, which was fully adopted in 2016. It reduced tariffs significantly, increased transparency and scale as well. In 2017, it was not just solar alone. So India recognized that it also has to secure its supply chain. So there was solar manufacturing policy announced in 2017, which encouraged domestic module and cell production, which had limited impact initially, but in the later years, coupled with more schemes, we have seen growth in manufacturing of modules and cells as well. So while so far there was a lot more that was being done for utility scale, but in 2020, government announced PM Kusum scheme to promote the decentralized renewable energy, basically solar irrigation, and also launched, Atmanirbhar Bharat with solar manufacturing incentives, the PLI scheme with 2.5 billion USD for integrated cell and module production. So there was tremendous private sector interest as well in all these different schemes, which really helped. And as I said, the large scale deployment. Uh, Further, India introduced some other non-tariff barriers like basic custom duties, ALMM, which is approved list of models and manufacturers from April 2024. But more importantly, I would say another instrument which kind of really led the solar growth story and demand from corporate CNI consumers was the Green Open Access Rule. This really kind of again led more and more demand for solar power by CNI sector in India. In 2024, another rooftop solar policy acceleration through PM Surya Ghar scheme was launched with 8.5 billion US dollar support. If you look at 2024 and beyond, there is big focus continuation of storage-led tenders, I would say, to make renewable energy power more reliable and reduce reliance on discoms or other fuel stacking. So while this is on the policy and regulation, we want to just emphasize the role of some critical institutions like public and private. We had SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India, which really helped in bridging the off-taker risk. And also the role of IRIDA, again, for lending to projects at concessional rates, taking risks when other commercial banks and financial institutions didn't. Sorry, I know I had to spend a lot of time because this whole session was on policy, and I wanted to emphasize the various different policies that had played a big role in shaping India's solar sector. Next slide, very quickly. While I've discussed, some of these before, want to highlight the importance of market mechanisms in addition to policies that played a big role in solar deployment. When solar prices were as high as 12 to 15 Indian rupees, which is 13 to 18 cents USD cents per kilowatt hour, market played a big role in incentivizing developers and investors to bet big money on this. So waiver of transmission charges was a big incentive for a lot of RE players because that reduced the overall cost for them. Whether it was feed-in tariff or introducing products at power exchange where they could earn better returns, or green open access, which made procuring RE by CNI consumers directly, that led to more and more demand for solar energy. So market mechanisms also played a big role. Next slide.
电危机，有光有电，从容应急。Solar Room，您的应急能源守护者，在突发灾害和紧急情况下，可靠的能源。
Share, you may want to.
能源。
Thank you.
Sorry for that disruption. Again, another thing that I want for competitive procurement, even tender designs have evolved over the year. So from plain vanilla solar contracts, we have seen there is a demand for RTC, peak power, or demand following contracts. So the right-hand side of the chart shows, how share of such contract has gone up, which contributes to now about 49% of the overall RE contract. Next slide. Again, want to emphasize the open access, how, open access has played a big role. Most of the CNI demand is met through open access now than buying from traditional discom. So even within the open access market, there has been a shift rather than buying from third party. There is more interest to set captive and group captive plants as some of the additional surcharges, are waived off and make prices more competitive for the CNI consumers. Next slide. Again, just want to emphasize while the government played an enabler's role through policy, risk mitigation like SECI, payment guarantees, and transparent auctions, but India's solar growth story, I would say, has been overwhelmingly led by private sector, with independent power producers, developers, investors driving capacity expansion, innovation, and cost reduction at scale. Next slide. So we have talked about India, but very, very quickly about Korea and Pakistan, which recently witnessed solar boom in the country. Next slide. You'll see in both these countries very similar enablers like India. In Korea, starting with feed-in tariff to renewable portfolio standard, which was the main driver for utility scale growth, to competitive auctions in 2021, and then corporate PPAs have driven the solar deployment in the country. Also, the K-Solar program for residential and public sector installation for rooftop provided capital subsidies. Next slide. Pakistan, again, as a country, is another great example where solar had witnessed a much larger uptake. So, from setting a target of 30% of electricity from renewable energy to competitive auctions to guarantee grid access and long-term PPAs, they have it all. But more importantly, I would say the net metering regulation enabling residential, commercial, and industrial consumers to install rooftop solar and receive credit for excess electricity which is being fed into the grid have been instrumental. So these policies, coupled with declining solar panel costs as well as a lot of frequent power outages which the country was witnessing, that made solar a viable and attractive solution, for both investors and consumers. Next slide. So these were some of the great lessons for Egypt to learn from the Asian countries on how successfully they have managed to deploy both, utility scale and small scale solar projects. With this, I will end my presentation. Thank you, and happy to answer any follow-up questions which you have. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, and thanks for giving that comprehensive perspective on the different policy tools that really worked in case of, especially with the India case study. We hope that that will be food for thought for a lot of the participants that are attending this session. Andreas, like he mentioned, from 11% share to 42% share, that's the national target that Egypt has put out. And that journey itself spells a lot of opportunity for a lot of the industry stakeholders that we have attending this session. I see a lot of bankers, in fact, in the attendee list, and this is something, the next level of bank financing, just like we have seen in a lot of Asian countries, probably going that way. I would presume that your comprehensive policy tool slide also answers the question that I see in the chat box by Pachinta Allen of Hattu Research. Pachinta, if that slide answered your questions to a large extent, do let us know. But otherwise, we are always happy to fill in with more information and connect you to the suitable agencies that are speaking today in the webinar. Let me now move on to Xia Li. Xia Li is joining us all the way from China. She's the founder and CEO of Shenzhen Power Solutions. They are quite active in the African market as well, and we're excited to hear your presentation. Over to you, Xia. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrajit. I'm right now in Africa, in Lagos, in Abuja, in Nigeria today. So I might feel sorry if my power cut or internet stop. It might be happen because it's now still power cut 5 to 6 times a day. So if my internet is not well, I will switch off my camera. Thanks for your understanding. So can you share with my PPT, please? Thank you. So thanks for the invitation, and I really learned a lot from the previous expertise. And I'm so happy there are so many investors, policymakers, organizations, and grants providers in this community, in this ecosystem. So my name is Xia Li. Actually, I'm from China, the founder of SolarRun and also Power Solution. So we were in Africa for 16 years. We would like to share our experience how to leverage China technology, material advanced, to empower Africa last mile, even the shortcut power supply for how to access of energy in an affordable way. Next, please. So we are actually 16 years for the practice in the field. Next page, please. Yeah. So since we are in Africa for 16 years, I think the most important for Africa right now, especially in the rural electrification, the most challenge is about the affordability. And so when we design the products, we put affordability in the first priority and also the durability. So nowadays, a lot of people is discussing about e-waste. Yes, we solve some problem in Africa, but it's another problem. The parts are not available, and the repairment is not available. Service is not available. So the durability is becoming another challenge. And then we care about more is about sustainability. Sustainability means it's not only sustainability for the users, consumers benefit, it's also the sustainability for the environment. So according to this, we have our design principles. We make a 3R design principles to meet the customer demand. First is reduce, means we have to use least material to design the functionality for the user's benefit. And the second is reuse. So as you can see in the picture, our solar light is hooked on the bottle. So this bottle actually is available everywhere, even in the last mile. So we reuse this bottle as a stand to decrease the material use, to saving the cost, at the same time to saving the logistic, the transportation cost, and then replace. So I know everybody is discussing about recycle, but right now in the last mile of rural, recycle is not realistic. So we are thinking about replacement. If we design the product in the right way by replacing the parts easily, so it can be somehow reduce the e-waste, and at the same time extension the lifespan of the products, and also reduce the spending of the user to buy a totally new one. So follow this 3R design concept, we make the product is more affordable, durable, and sustainable. So as an example, in this picture, you can see this product, Total Energy Limit Pocket Shine, which you can see in the most Africa petrol station of Total Energies is developing this Pocket Shine solar light, which is only made by 9 parts, including 1 screw. So this is followed our 3R design concept to make it affordable. And by the same time, our design of hook on the bottle is get Red Dot Award. So by the same time, this is also WRSO certified, which is recognized by World Bank and the IFC standard. This is how we satisfy the end user in affordable way. Next page, please. So with this design concept, right now we have the comprehensive product line. So according to the income and also the suffering challenge of the power challenges, we have 3 categories of products. PECO systems, which is more for rural, is also for some suburbs or the towns around the city. So this is focused on solar light and the PECO system, solar home systems. And the solar DC home appliances. This is right now, we're trying to make a revolution in Africa. Africa now is having, especially the Sub-Saharan Africa, one side is they are suffering from the high power consumption by diesel because of a power cut. And one side, some of their home appliances is old. So the power consumption of the old AC appliances is very high. And another side, rural of the Africa communities, they don't really have any DC home appliances because they don't have power. So the revolution now we are trying to make, if the power you are giving is solar battery storage, is DC power, why don't we directly use the DC home appliances to plug into the power directly? So the DC home appliances is about 1/3 power consumption of AC home appliances. And now we are very focused on not only DC fan, DC TV, we are very focused on DC fridge and freezer and ice making. The reason is we see a lot of food lost in Africa. Even the productivity is very low. But the food loss is high because they don't have any solar cooling systems. They don't have any cooling system. So now if we give the solar power, we should directly give the DC fridge and freezer to saving the power and make the affordability and availability and accessibility is available. And the last range of our solution is the solar energy storage system. Nowadays, especially in Nigeria, at this period, they cancel the subsidies of diesel, also cancel the subsidies of utility electricity before. So that means the power is becoming expensive day after day. So it's becoming very unaffordable and also more expensive than diesel generator. So that's why we make this solar power storage to replacing the diesel generator. It's not only in the household, but also in the small offices and small business like a supermarket, hotels, diesel generations, digital petrol stations, and also the public sector like hospitals, universities, railway stations. So this is the third category, is really increase the productivity use and also saving a lot of carbon emissions, which replace the diesel generator. So this is our full range of solutions, which is quite mature and executed in the market. It's not only economic benefit, but it's also environmental benefit, saving a lot of carbon emissions. Next, please. So with our solutions, we already benefit more than 66 countries end users, and more than benefit about 70 million families, 70 million people. So also reduced carbon is about 9 million tons of CO2. Next, please. So in Africa, if we see far away, not only in the short period, we can see the local empowerment is also very important. So we are not only to do the trade-off. I mean, we deliver from China and we sell in Africa. So we are also local landed in Africa to empower the local people by technician, also by the industry material supplying chain. So our first successful experience in Ethiopia is we already held the SKD factory in Ethiopia for 2 years. And this year we will further go down to CKD, which is making plastic injection, the cable made locally. And also the solar panel, the small solar panels, we will also made locally in Ethiopia. And our next plan will be in Nigeria. That's why I stay in Nigeria for 4 weeks already for this journey. So what we trust is, by the huge demand of the market in Africa, and also huge youth populations, and also the jobless employment situation, locally manufacture is going to be a future. So with our manufacturer experience in China, we should transfer the technicians and empower the local here. Next, please. We are so happy to hear a lot of investors, policymakers is driving about Africa energy access. There is a big potential. And Solaran is also looking for investors right now. We open our door. So by 16 years experience, we really know how to work with our partners, and the channel is ready. But I also appeal here. I know the investors who is looking for investment in Africa is always looking at a bigger scale. But sometimes look at the startups like us, who has the real practice and the real experience and empower the people in a small way, not in a very, very big way. But we're also working with big partners like Total Energies and Orange as distribution channels. So I also look forward investors can look at some policies to empower the small and medium-sized enterprises like us, to empower us to empower the Africa local. And welcome to connect us either by email or by LinkedIn. Thank you, Shurajit. I think I finished my part.
Thank you, Shia. And I hope that after Ethiopia and Nigeria, you'll definitely consider Egypt as your next project. I would, in fact, urge a lot of the stakeholders that are from the financial sector to be in touch with, business concerns like Shia and others that we have here. There's a lot of activity happening, a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity out there. With this, let me now hand it over to Shishir Garimella. He's the head of international business development at Kiwa PVEL in India. Shishir, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much for having me. Can you all hear me fine?
Yes.
That's great. That's great. May I request you to put on the presentation, please? Right. Thank you. I have 7 minutes, 1 minute for a quick introduction and 3 takeaways for 2 minutes each. I think that's the plan. So can I get to the slide 5, please? I know we have paucity of time here, so I won't take too long to tell you who we are. But we are a reliability testing lab. And 5, please. Slide 5, please. Thank you. So we're a reliability testing lab. What we do is we sit right in the middle of two very big uh, sectors, upstream and downstream of solar. The manufacturers on one end give us their solar modules. We test them and we have them go through a really rigorous product qualification program, which is nothing but a set of 10 tests that we do to uh, have the modules experience the same vagaries of nature that they would go through if they were out in the field. So we have a lab, we have chambers in the lab, and we do multiple tests to really see if they will last for 25 or 30 years. And once that data comes out, we give all this data away under NDAs and things like that, with permission from the manufacturers to the downstream, which is the investors, the insurers, the EPCs, the developers, etc. So that's really where we sit within the industry. And from our vantage point, we really see, for all the talk of solar, are the modules really performing, the solar modules really performing on the field? So that's really our job. And that's fundamentally who we are as a company. So what I will do now is, rather than go through great details about our testing, I'm going to leave you with three takeaways that I'd like you to think through when you're thinking of policy and financing and everything solar in Egypt. So the first takeaway is on slide 7. If you could come to slide 7, please. Thank you. So what we've noticed is there are parts to this world where solar manufacturing has been traditionally going on for a long time, like Southeast Asia, China. But there are newer countries like India, like Laos, like Turkey, even the United States. What we've noticed is that when modules are made from these countries, the newer countries, they do really well, or they do at par with the global peers when it comes to reliability testing. That means you take a module and you put it in a chamber for 600 hours, 2000 hours. That reliability testing is at par with the global averages. However, when you look at the issues that they deal with, which is more quality assurance and quality control issues on the assembly line while the manufacturing was going on, those issues are much higher. For example, this chart shows you that every 1 out of 3 modules in 33% of the modules coming from India had some form of minor defect like delamination, misalignment, etc. Again, I'm not going to get into great detail here because I'm aware that the audience is not fully technical. But what I'd like you to think through is that when you're buying modules or manufacturing modules in countries where manufacturing is new, the inline testing has to be very important. On the reliability side, maybe the performance is as good as any global average. So that's the first takeaway, that the Indian modules showed a lot more QA/QC issues at the plant level than the rest of the world. The second takeaway, please, the next slide. Middle East and North Africa are becoming a very important place for the Chinese to now build a bastion of manufacturing. And my previous speaker alluded to that as well. We see a lot of manufacturers around the world, maybe 70, 80 manufacturers globally test with us over the years, have tested with us. And these are some of the learnings that I'd like to leave you with as you think of manufacturing within Egypt or buying projects from other countries for Egyptian solar consumption. So firstly, automated lines are significantly, they require a lot more in-process inspection, and they require a lot more visual inspection, right? So what we're noticing is back in the day, we would have a lot of manual work. All that is gone now. Everything is automated. And we feel that, this visual inspection is often, the word used for it is AI, because so much image processing is going on. So if you want to buy lines, please buy automated lines. Second, no matter how much we look at machinery, trained and skilled manpower is still something that is important and takes a lot of time. And that's one of the big keys to success, right? And I'll give you an example. In fact, I'll share the example that my colleague shares, is that if he and his wife get exactly the same bill of materials, that means the same ingredients to bake a cake, the answers, the output would be vastly different. So having the right ingredients and having the right process is one thing, but as the factory changes, the manpower changes, the automation changes, and all those subtle things can have a vastly different result. So it's very important that you get your skilled manpower going, you have your automated lines, and you have factory locations that are fully ready for large scale production. The other thing that I'd like to highlight is supply chain optionality. We live in a very complicated geopolitical environment. Solar is not as much about technology and finance and policies as much as it is about geopolitics, which is why if you have 3 or 4 options to buy your raw material or your machines from, my suggestion would be to have more options because you never know who would be tariffed tomorrow morning. So that's why, and that's not specific to a country, that's just generally how I have seen global solar market develop over the last 15 years. Friends and foes change very quickly. So having that supply chain optionality is really important. For buyers, if you're buying solar equipment for your projects, it's very important that the ingredients on the cake are correct, but also the every time a new batch gets made, so if you have say 100 megawatt plant in Egypt and you have 10 batches of 10 megawatts of production each, it's very important to do ongoing reliability monitoring because you may have 2 very good batches and then you have really bad quality. That's why having a very close benchmark and a close eye on the manufacturing process is critical. Finally, I'd like to leave you with this one word that everyone talks about called bankability. Bankability is essentially a set of documents that say that a manufacturer X or Y or Z is a check mark on all parameters, which include technical, financial, as well as things to do with supply chain traceability, etc. There are parts of this world that don't like to buy equipment from certain provinces, from certain countries, from certain regions. So traceability, financing, as well as technology, getting all that right is very critical. And that document is called bankability. So please ensure that you have that as you scale faster. And my last slide is on slide 9, please. Thank you. We have a report that we release every year. It's called the Module Reliability Scorecard. And we released that about an hour ago for 2025. And I'd like to leave you with some highlights quickly. What we noticed is that there are many manufacturers around the world that do well, but 50 stood out in performance. And 7 of them are top performers for the first time. So we have different benchmarks for the ones who are top performers and who are not. And what we noticed is if you're a new entrant in the market, there is no reason that you can't make a great module. And if you're an old entrant, doesn't mean your brand is great. That means your module will be great, right? So it's very important that you read this scorecard, not only to understand how, who's stacking up as 1, 2, 3, 4 globally, but also what are the common failure modes, right? We see a lot of issues with hail. We see a lot of issues with modules breaking. Now, none of these things will ever come to you in the boardrooms because they always happen on the field. But when we test these modules, we look at all these little aspects, right? And this is what eventually converts electrons to dollars. And it is very important that you understand what these practical failure modes are. So my request would be if you could go to that website, scorecard.pwell.com, and download this year's summary of the scorecard. And if you have any questions, on the next slide is my email address, and you can send that to me. So I wish Egypt good luck as you scale solar. Please buy the right kind of products. Solar comes with a 25-year warranty, and it's very important that we stick to that as an industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shishir. A very interesting presentation. And I think, yes, just like we talk of the manufacturing value chain, there's a huge point to also make on the financing value chain. So what you just said, to convert electrons to dollars. I mean, there's so many little nitty-gritties in that process. In fact, we see a bit of interest in the question also from colleagues who want to connect with Shia, you as well, and we have Irtiza also coming in next. We'll be happy to create those connections. In fact, also take this opportunity to call out that we have Dr. Dina Yusri El Sayed also in the attendee list. She's actually, she's an assistant professor at the German University in Cairo, but she's also a sustainability expert, part of the National Initiative for Green Smart Projects of Egypt that has been launched by the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development. And Dr. Dina, if it's okay, towards the end in the audience Q&A, I will call you out to add a couple of words on what your experience has been with the Green Smart Project initiative and how you see that can play a big role in scaling up solar in Egypt, following all the presentations that we hear. But at this time, let me go next to Irtaza. Irtaza, you've been waiting for quite some time. Over to you, Irtaza. He's the COO of Shams Power, Pakistan. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Surajit. My name is Irtaza. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Shams Power. So we are a large solar C&I developer in Pakistan. So I'm going to present our project, which is called Solar Empower, where basically we train female engineers with the essential skills that are needed to be part of the solar industry. So the project started back in 2019 when we had slightly grown up and we figured out that we don't have a lot of female engineers in our team. So then we basically took a deep dive, figured out what is wrong, what is missing, and then we figured out that the biggest issue is the lack of opportunity. Because a lot of these girls who are coming, when they send in the CV, they don't have the right skill set or they don't perform well in the interview. So a lot of the times the hiring manager or the HR just turn them down because they are not at par with the other candidates that we have. So we decided to take this problem in our hand and we started this initiative where we train girls on practical and industrial based issues. So whatever they have studied in their 4 years of degree as part of their engineering college, we enhance them by giving them what the industry wants them. So it's a 6 days training where we first teach them industrial softwares like PV-Syst, Helioscope, PVK, and then we take them to the sites where they go and see how these plants work, what is the science and engineering behind it. And then on the last day of their technical engineering, we give them the opportunity to actually physically install some of these panels. So then they can connect whatever they have studied in their classrooms as well as during our training. And then they can basically see what all kind of challenges are there on the field. The training does not end just on the technical part. Then we basically hold their hands to make sure that they are part of the workforce. So then we also help them with a lot of these soft skills training, which includes CV building, interviewing skills, mock interviews, laws around employment in Pakistan. What are the key things that they need to see when they get any offer, either it's for an internship or for a job placement. So then we have a lot of these support groups where we keep on sharing a lot of these employment opportunities with them. And we are very happy that till now we have trained more than 150 girls. And out of those, we have a 90% plus success rate where these girls have been placed in the solar or in the relevant industry. Because a lot of these girls were previously doing jobs in not in the education related industry because they wanted to work on it. So a very small video which basically covers the whole project. So with your permission, Surajit, I would like to play it. I have I believe, the rights. So if you allow, I can just play this small video. It will be a good recap of what we have been doing and also will give a lot of visuals for the attendees to relate to.
Okay.
Maybe we can share the video with the audience member. Would that be fine, Surajit?
The video is not public as yet. So I'll just play it now. Back in 2019, we realized that we did not have a single female engineer in our team. So we took a deep dive and found out that it's not about finding the right talent or finding the competence, it was about opportunity. So we took this problem in our hand and then we started Solar Power.
Yeah, have been running this project, Solar in Power, for the past 6 years, and we have trained around 150 plus women. So what we do is, this is an intensive 6-day training program designed with technical skills, essential soft skills. Where we give them real world exposure as well. We bring them to the plant sites, and we also help them in understanding how factories and industries actually operate. We focus on both system designing and practical skills. Women here learn how solar system works, load profiling, system designing, safety protocols, as well as hands-on expertise on system design software previously.
The idea was to give them real-life opportunities with experience, what the industry wants, and also polish their skills.
The video is not processing properly, at least on my computer. I'm not sure about others. But since we are a bit tight for time, may I request that we share the link of this video later with all the participants. Once it comes out live, we'll be happy to do that, and we'll be happy to be with them. But maybe let's go to your presentation, your talk. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So this will be done like be public in a week's time. So then I'll share the link with you, and then you can then share with the rest of the participants. So now what we have been doing is basically connecting them with industry. So we hire a good batch out of these girls that have now working with us. So the idea was to find good talent, train them, and then retain them. So we are very happy that this has made a lot of impact over here in Pakistan. And I wish that something similar could be replicated in Egypt. We are available to share the coursework, the material, how to basically scale it up, anything that is needed. So if you have any ideas, any partnership opportunities, we'll be more than happy to support.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. That was a very interesting women empowerment program, that angle that you brought in. Appreciate that. And like I said, we'll be happy to share the link of the video once it comes. Do let us know. Let me now move to Shantanu Srivastav. He's the lead analyst for sustainable finance and climate risk South Asia at IFA, to speak on financing thematic. Thank you. Shantanu, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarijit. Priyanka, would you be sharing this presentation? Great. Thank you so much. And I won't take a lot of time. We're already running over time. So if you could just go to the next slide. So we've already heard a lot of good insights from Asian markets on what's worked in this region and what could be replicated in the Egyptian market. I'll just talk a bit more on the financing side of things, and what's really worked in the emerging Asian markets specifically, which are more closer to Egypt, in terms of mobilizing capital, both from a domestic market, but more importantly from the foreign markets, to finance the country's energy transition forays. So we already know from the presentations previously that Asia has been a hotbed for renewable energy investments over the last 14-15 years. And while it's been anchored by China, there are several emerging economies like India, Indonesia, and other Asian economies, which have actually done exceedingly well in incorporating renewable energy onto the grid. Next slide, please. Right, and if we just try to understand and delve deeper into what has contributed towards, what factors have contributed towards the greater flow of this investment into the solar sector and the wider renewable energy sector in emerging Asian economies, these factors could be grouped into three broad categories. First are technology factors, second are policy-related factors, and third are market-related factors. And we've seen through Vibhuti's presentation and presentation by other speakers also, that policy probably is the largest driving force behind greater flow of capital and investments into solar renewable energy. But technology and market factors also play a very important role. And in a combination, these three sort of categories of key enablers, what they do is they de-risk investments by the private sector primarily, into renewable energy by driving down the overall cost of capital. And we've seen in India, and I'll take a case study of that in the later slides, that in India, the overall cost of capital, especially the cost of debt, has gone down from close to 15 to 16% till close to 7.5% today. And because of this decrease in the overall cost of capital, what we've seen is that the project returns or the project IRRs for developers and investors investing into solar and other renewable energy assets have actually come at par with other infrastructure investments in the region. So I won't take a lot of time to delve into all of these categories, but broadly, if you see, technology factors, what really played well for emerging Asian economies. So solar costs have plummeted by close to 80% over the last decade or so. And Asian economies are wise enough to capitalize on this falling the cost of solar modules, which really worked in their favor. Secondly, what we've seen, and Vibhuti also alluded about this fact that, countries like India, they're not just focusing on solar. They're focusing on solar plus wind plus hydro and lately storage. So we're creating hybrid projects which can compete against, their natural competitor, which is, energy created or power created through conventional sources. Because end of the day, capital is competing for, the capital that is going into solar is going to compete against capital that will be going into, power generated through coal or gas. So, hybridization has actually been a very important role. Secondly, a very pertinent risk for any investor putting up solar or other renewable energy assets is evacuation of power. Right. So expansion of the transmission and distribution network in tandem with renewable energy capacity, I think that's very important, and that actually provides a lot of de-risking to solar investments. And we've seen that happening in India. We've also seen that happening in other Asian markets. Third is supportive government policies. I won't go into that, but picking up from what Vibhuti mentioned, availability of land, that was a de-risking done through, setting up solar parks, having power 25-year power purchase agreements, payment security mechanisms, having must-run status, transition cost waivers, all of these, different policy levers. What they've done is that they've reduced the cost, a perceived cost of investing into solar in countries like India, and which has driven down the cost of capital. Similarly, having a long-term vision. So in India's case, like Vibhuti mentioned, we had a national solar mission. We have a 2030 solar target. We have a 2047 target and a 2070 net zero target. So having a long-term vision actually helps to give those market signals to long-term patient capital to come and invest into hard infrastructure assets for the next 25, 30, 40 years. And along with that, actually walking the talk. Having those investable pipelines in place, that's really worked very well for countries like India to bring in large-scale capital, especially from foreign markets. Market is, because there was a lot of energy or electricity being injected on the grid or renewable sources, there also had to be offtake. And because, these economies were growing, urbanization was going over there, there was also a ready offtake. So some of these factors are just the invisible hands of the market playing its part, but some of these, a majority of these are actually, de-risking that is being done by the policy side of things. Next slide, please. And I just picked up this particular slide from the IEA, which shows beautifully how, de-risking on these three buckets, the policy, technology, and the market side of things, can reduce the levelized cost of energy for solar. And what is essentially happening over here is that through, market-based measures or policy measures, when you de-risk these different sort of real and perceived risks for market participants, it is reducing the discount rate, which is the denominator in the LCOE calculation, if you see, which is essentially the overall cost of capital. So I think there is a lot of gain that can happen by targeted de-risking of these risk buckets in the Egyptian markets also, to make solar more competitive compared to other infrastructure assets. Next slide, please. And yeah, so I'll just take a moment to talk a bit more about India, because I think Adam also talked about how investments in India have grown 7x from 2010 to 2024, right? So while the other emerging markets in Asia have also done good in terms of adoption of renewable energy, India is a standalone case, right? It's just behind China in terms of adoption of renewable energy and the kind of investments that have gone into the market. But a very important thing to note about the Indian market is that conventionally, if you see, critical infrastructure assets such as roads, ports, to some extent transmission and distribution and conventional power, they've primarily been funded by government balance sheets, not just in India and other emerging markets also. But in India, what we have seen is that today, majority of renewable energy capacity that has been funded through private capital. And how that's been possible, and that's essentially what you need in an emerging market, right? To move, capital intensive assets like renewable energy away from government balance sheets to private sector balance sheets. And why that has happened is because the Indian market, the government is not or public capital is not competed with private capital to set up renewable energy capacities. Rather, public capital has been used to de-risk private capital investments into solar and other renewable energy assets to targeted interventions. And again, I'm not talking about those. We've seen that earlier. Next slide, please. And if I can just portray this sort of de-risking that has happened through how the availability of capital has increased over the years in India for financing renewable energies. So there are three key sort of buckets in this overall journey. So if you look at the time period from 20, and I'm going to bucket them for the sake of time. So 2010 to 2015, before the signing of the Paris Agreement, what we saw was that in India, the debt capital for financing renewable energy was very scarce. And there were only a few non-banking financial corporations that were available to, lend at very high rate, 15 to 16%, which were extremely high compared to other infrastructure assets in the country. But at that point in time, what really happened and what worked for India was that there was a lot of global institutional capital that came and invested or provided primary equity to solar companies, independent power producers that had set up shops during the 2010-2012 period in India and provide that risk capital. So that risk capital, essentially what it did was it gave appropriate funds for Indian companies to scale up solar capacities. And secondly, it provided those demonstration effects for the other capital providers to then have confidence on that solar is possible in India. And I think that's very important at the initial stage for any market that is going into solar. Secondly, during the 2015-2019 market, while there were some hiccups in the market and on the policy side, but what we saw was that broadly more debt capital providers came to the market. So we saw that some large private sector banks came, the global bond markets were opened up, domestic bond markets were opened up. We saw the first set of green bonds being issued from India. And again, this was because an ecosystem level learning was happening because lenders and capital providers saw that solar is possible. It is generating returns and it is generating steady returns. Again, all of this was on the back of stable policies. And lastly, the 2019 to 2025, 2024 period, which is the current period, what we've seen is a maturity of the market, where there's a lot of capital recycling that is happening, essentially on the debt and the equity side. So on the debt side, what we are seeing is that developers who had taken loans from banks and other financing corporations in India, now they're recycling or refinancing that debt from global bond markets at lower rates and better terms as projects go from construction stage to operational stage. At the same time, what we are seeing is that on the equity side, a lot of patient capital like global pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, insurance companies, and other global capital providers, they're coming and buying up stakes in operational RE projects. What it is doing, it is freeing up capital from the books of developers, domestic developers, and helping them put that capital, freed up capital, into pipeline projects. And that that creates a vicious cycle in which provides fresh set of hands coming in the market and freeing up capital to invest into newer technologies or newer capacities. Next slide, please. And just to quickly wrap it up, so some of the key takeaways for Egypt to also create that financing ecosystem that that we've seen build up in India today. There are a few key things that need to be cracked. Firstly, like I mentioned, long-term capital commitment from the government's end is extremely important and walking the talk. Secondly, de-risking private capital. We definitely need capital which understands or has experience of exposure to renewable energy assets in other geographies. So it understand what is the risk return profile of assets like solar. And that's really worked for India, and I think Egypt should also vie for such institutional capital providers. Thirdly, we need to attract Egypt really need to attract global institutional capital because end of the day, large scale and patient capital is needed to be invested into these capacities for the next 10-15 years. And that's why we need capital, not just from the global domestic market, but global market. And then I'll just rush through this. Having a capital recycling approach, like I just talked about earlier, having a domestic sustainable financing ecosystem through having sustainable finance regulations, green taxonomies, decarbonization roadmaps for the green power sector. All of these are very important to attract global ESG aligned capital, and then ensuring supporting infrastructure such as transmission distribution assets to support the growth of renewables is important. And lastly, because these assets thrive on economies of scale, providing Bourbon solar park type mega projects so that large scale capital can come and invest into Egypt's solar journey is very important. And I'll just stop over there. I'm sorry, I just rushed through all of these things, but happy to answer any questions later on. Over to you, Sarojit.
Thank you, Shantanu. I think that point of the risk buckets, that which bucket actually contributes to the end game where, as far as the cost is concerned, I think that's a very fantastic insight for all the financial sector stakeholders that we have attending here. That when it comes to pricing and pricing the debt facility for these projects and the cost of capital, because especially in context of Egypt's average cost of capital market rates are generally being much on the higher side as compared to what is seen in a number of emerging economies elsewhere in the world. So I think that's good food for thought. With this, let's go for the closing remarks. It's a recorded session. May I request you to put on the video while the video comes on, just to give a quick introduction. Tharinya Supasa, she's the head of sustainable and renewable energy at the ASEAN Center for Energy. ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and ASEAN Energy Center is part of the ASEAN Secretariat. She'll add a bit of context from the Southeast Asian perspective. Let's have the video now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues in Egypt. Allow me to send greetings from Southeast Asia. My name is Tharinya Supasa. I'm the head of Sustainable and Renewable Energy from ASEAN Center for Energy, or ACE, ACE. ACE, we are the intergovernmental organizations who work with 10 ASEAN member states on the energy topics. So first of all, I would like to thank GIC Egypt and also IEEFA. So here, maybe we would like to highlight the government policy side. It can be actually categorized into 3 groups. So the first one, I think the governments in the Southeast Asia, they also send a strong supportive policy and ambitious target through their national energy plan and also in the power development plan. So one good example is Vietnam. They just launched the PDP version 8 last year, which defined explicitly that Vietnam would like to increase their renewable energy supply. 30% come from RE by 2030. That's actually sent quite a strong signal to stakeholder and also investor to increase the investment in Vietnam. And the second one is come from a mixed market instrument and incentive. Maybe here we would like to give for a selected example. So the first one is the feed-in tariffs. Again, the outstanding example is come from Vietnam, because in Vietnam before 2019, they have the solar PV install capacity below 10 megawatt. But after the government issued a feed-in tariff scheme with a strong target on the Vietnam, so this is kind of accelerate the Vietnam solar PV install capacity quite significant in 2023. So the capacity is increased more than 13 gigawatt. So that's mean during 5 years, so the country can increase their install capacity more than 100 times from 10 megawatt to 13 gigawatt, which is quite outstanding success case. And the second one is the auction and bidding. because the competitive bidding for the solar project can drive down the price and also ensures transparency in the procurements. One good example is the Philippine Green Energy Auction Program. Moving to the other market instrument, which is the direct PPA or the direct power purchase agreement, which is allowed the corporates to have the direct procurement of the renewable energy from the producer directly. So two country which is now implementing the piloting and implementing the direct purchase agreement framework. The other instrument is the net metering and also the solar rooftop PV. This provides the incentive for the solar rooftop installation because for net metering, it allows the consumer to sell the excess solar power back into the grid. And also some tax rate is also very encouraging the distributed generation. So apart from the market instrument and policy, there is the growing availability of the green finance, including green bonds and loans from the international financial institution like ADB or the Asia Development Bank and the Commercial Bank, and also the blended finance between the private and public sector, and the innovation model, which is quite significant to impact the growth of solar in both utility scale and also the small scale.
Shantanu, maybe
To
you
the
could
questions
pause
on
the
how Southeast Asia.
Yeah, so I think well, broadly the message is captured of what policies worked, and we can close that video there. Let me now put it out to the audience if there's any questions. But before that, Dr. Dina, if I may request you to share a couple of words based on your experiences with the National Initiative for Green Smart Projects, how you see clean energy pacing out there. Over to you. Can we unmute Dina, please? I think it will be a great input to have your words on this. Thank you. Dina, over to you. Shantanu, can I request you to unmute Dina? I think she's still
we've
muted.
asked you unmute.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks, Shantanu.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I'll keep it very quick. As you've already mentioned, that I don't want to repeat, that Egypt did make a significant advance in solar energy. They are trying to reach a unique position in the Middle East and North Africa. We can say or summarize like the number of projects, especially in Aswan. However, what I see the most remarkable initiative of all is the National Initiative for Green Smart Project, which for those who do not know, it's an initiative that was launched at the end of 2022. It mainly targeting to sustainable or promote sustainable development and address all the climate related issues. So in fact, it do align with the Egypt vision of 2030 and the National Climate Change Strategy of 2050. The key objective of this initiative is mainly to encourage environmentally sustainable and digitally innovative projects across all governorate. So it is actually localized across the 27 governorates. It also meant to like provide a comprehensive map to attract for all the participating projects, so we can attract both local and international investments. And above all, I believe it's unique in essence, given that it meant to empower especially women and youth in all related climate action and sustainable development. And what I see really crucial in this time we are living in, that with all the challenges we are facing, is that it meant to raise public awareness about the climate change, the importance of renewable energy, the importance of related or adapting to changing climate and preventing further deterioration. In essence, this initiative is targeting all scale projects, so from mega large project to small ones to even startups and to developmental project actually focusing on women and climate change, and also even non-profit initiatives. Just to highlight the success of this initiative, in only the first 2 rounds, we received over 17,000 project submission, targeting the different 6 categories I just highlighted. So, in fact, I believe that this initiative was only not effective and efficient in delivering the idea, but it managed to spread awareness on the micro level between youth who developed innovative idea when it comes to even improving, for example, the efficiency of solar grids, robotics responsible for cleaning the solar grid to ensure maximum productivity, etc. So I think this national initiative is actually serving as a model for integrating local communities into national climate action plans. Um, Further along with the already mentioned, as the prominent key speakers mentioned, the Fed and tariff program, the international partnership, the expansion strategy, and further infrastructure strategy. So I don't want to make it any longer. However, I'm open to any questions or inquiries, if any.
Thank you, Dr. Dina. I really appreciate those inputs. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the attendees who took out their time, and I hope that a lot of the insights would contribute towards the next phase of growth. We are already way beyond time, so we may have to curtail the audience Q&A here. But in case any of you do have any follow-on questions or inquiries, or you want to get in touch for collaborations, please do write in to saurajit.iyer@giz.de and srivastav@ifa.org. We would be happy to facilitate future interactions and answers. Thank you so much. With this, let me close this webinar, and thanks all to all of you.